I really, really hope that this vehicle was not used for home food delivery. Now understandably, the motor trader who drove this vehicle over put a seat cover on and some rubber gloves, because this thing's pretty disgusting. It's not the worst I've seen, but it definitely needs some attention. And it smells like a badger's armpit. So the used car conveyor belt today has brought us a Volkswagen Golf diesel. This vehicle's currently 16 years old and has covered around about 75,000 miles, so it's pretty low for its year, and quite evidently it's been sat around for quite a while. You've got green stuff growing out of the rubber seals, a lot of mould, and a rather filthy engine bay. So this particular Golf isn't fitted with front parking sensors, but that wasn't a problem for the previous owner. The audible grinding noise from the front alloy wheels alerted them that they were parked near enough to the curb. So I'm going to spray the engine bay with a decent amount of all-purpose cleaner to help loosen off the dirt and grime. Then I'm going to agitate it with two different brushes today. The first one's a soft interior brush, and the second one is an easy wheel brush, or EZ, depends on how you want to pronounce it. It's a softer or smaller one of the two, I should say, and it's good just for getting around awkward areas like that expansion tank or between the battery tray and the airbox, and allows you to give the engine bay a much more thorough clean. Once the engine bay is well scrubbed, we can look to washing it off. And I'm going to use a cartridge jet wash with a power control, so I'm going to put that down to its minimum setting to minimise the risk of any electrical damage. And then we're going to rinse off all the filthy all-purpose cleaner and muck off that engine to leave a nice natural looking finish. It's a very similar process on the outside of the car, so I've initially rinsed this down with a jet wash to remove any of the dust and debris off the surface of the paintwork, then given it a liberal coating of all-purpose cleaner. Use the same soft interior brush just to go around things like the rubber seals, the door handles, and that really green coloured trim on the side of the car. The lower part of these Golfs have like a textured finish on the sill to protect them. It's quite a thick underseal almost. And so I'm going to use a soft Vicam brush that you would use on a tyre wall, or maybe the face of the alloy wheel, just to give those a bit more of a thorough scrub to remove the road debris off there. So after the engine bay, the door shuts, the fuel flap, the wheels, and the wheel arches have all been cleaned, I'm just going to go around the body with a woolen wash mitt and get all any of the last bits of dirt off the paintwork, rinse it down, and then bring the car inside. So I'm going to use a soft interior detailing brush just to go around the switchgear on the car and around the cup holes and things, and just loosen off any sort of dust and debris that's easily removed. I might use a little bit of foam cleaner as we can see on camera, perhaps on things like the stereo that I don't want to get too wet later on with all-purpose cleaner. So as we can see on camera, some of this mould will just hoover up, and the more stubborn stuff's going to leave stains that we're going to need to wet back out afterwards. I use a Henry vacuum cleaner, and they come with these little microfiber bags in them. So I'll use the one bag for a car like this, and it'll be disposed of purely because of what we're sucking up inside the car and the health risk, etc. So the all-purpose cleaner I'm using is the usual. It's Built Hamber Surfix HD, and I've also got a separate sprayer and I've put some antibacterial and fungal agent in it. So once I've given it a clean with the all-purpose cleaner, I'll make sure I spray a bit of that on there and make sure that's well introduced to the fabric as well, to kill off as much of those mould and fungal spores as we can. And back by popular demand, the skank tank. So all that water there is from the driver's side of the vehicle, and what we're about to see is from the left hand side or the passenger side of the vehicle. So a reasonable amount of grubbiness out of a car that didn't look too bad, bar the mould. It just goes to show you what level of filth people are actually driving around in. Somebody mentioned in the comments about last week's episode about mould in general, and they said, do you ever actually remove all of it? And there's so many different ways of doing it, but the overall underlying thing I'm going to say is potentially not, for the sole reason is, with the wet vac for example, you're limited by how much penetration that water is going to get into that fabric and then how far it's going to get into the foam underneath in the seat. And people advocate quite a bit of steam cleaner, which again is another fabulous piece of equipment for killing off bacteria and mould. But again, you're limited by how far you can transmit that heat and steam into the fabric or the foam. I think either a steam cleaner or a wet vac in conjunction with some antifungal bacterial killing agents is going to work really well. But the ultimate issue is why that car got damp to start with. Was it something that someone left a window open by accident? Or if the car's got an underlying water leak, that mould's going to probably return, doesn't matter what you do. So identifying why the problems come to start with is probably the most important thing. I don't know what that is, but I can tell you one thing. I think it's probably the source of where the mould originated from, because that is absolutely disgusting, and it didn't smell too nice either. And with the driver's seat complete, it's back to the skank tank for the final time. we can get a full picture of what we've just extracted from those seats. And it's pretty grim. So we've used around about 40 litres there to flush out all that mould. So I explained to the customer that the wheels had a little bit of corrosion in them and it was probably best to go down the route of having them completely acid stripped. But sadly that's just not in the budget of these older vehicles, and he was quite happy with sort of an 80% improvement and the curbing removed. So what we're going to do here is I've gone over with some 80 grit and 240 with a larger sander just to get rid of the surface scratches. It's quite lucky that these Volkswagens of this era had some pretty thick powder coating at the time. So most of the damage is just into the surface sort of material rather than actually in the alloy wheel. Once I've used a smaller sander and done the more intricate areas by hand, I can then look to prepare the face of the wheel with some panel wipe to get any silicons and oils off before going over with some etch primer to seal up the bare metal. And once that process is done and it's dried and cured, that takes about 20 minutes, I can then go over with some base coat, which is silver paint, and then after that I can lacquer the wheel and let it dry. So once the wheels have cured fully the next day, I've refitted them, and now I'm just going to go around with some tar and glue remover just to remove any tar spots on the lower part of the car. Whilst the car's in the air, I'm going to put the centre caps back in, some new ones, and make sure they're in line with the tyre valves or I get told off in the comments section. And also fitting the tyre dressing whilst the car's up in the air is great because you can get full access to the bottom of the tyre. Once the tyre dressing's done, I'm going to go around with some masking tape and just go around things like the door handles, the plastic side moulding and the rubber door seals. It's just areas that I don't want the machine polisher to touch and potentially mark. It just makes my life a little bit easier further down the road. Time for some clay bar action. I've been using a couple of different ones recently, and I must say that the one from the Rag company's been really good. It's extremely good value for money, and it's quite large, so it really fits in your hand well. I do like that. I've been using Geon Clay Lube, again, both work very well together so far for me. Compound of choice this week is Kosh Chemie 1 Cut and Finish. It's a compound and sealant in one, which is basically a one-hit wonder, which is great for these trade cars. So you just compound the car, it's going to remove some light defects like marring and scratching and hazes. It gives a lovely glossy finish as we can see on screen, and it's also a sealant in one, so you don't actually have to go over the car and polish it again afterwards. Once that's done, I'm going to remove the masking tape, and I'm just going to go around areas that you can't get the machine polisher into. So it's going to be the recess behind the door handles. You get quite a lot of little scratches over the years where people have rubbed either fingernails or rings up against that. So we'll improve that as best we can. And then I'm going to go over with some Kosh Chemie quick detailer just to give that paintwork a little bit more protection and depth of gloss. Time for the bumpers and black trim to get a bit of attention as well. Then we can lower it down on the ramp and I can look to do the glass, and we're nearly finished. So luckily the sunshine was out this week for the reveal, which is really handy because this paintwork looks fantastic in direct sunlight. So bright. I do like the colour actually, it's a bit different. And as we go down the side of the cars each side, we've got a decent amount of reflection in there, and it looks really nice again. green slime and moss has been banished from the rubber door seals, and the alloy wheels look a big improvement than what they were. I think the biggest letdown on this car was that these plastics have this sort of soft touch material put on them. It does seem to wear over the years and flake off, and it's one of the things that the door handles just look weathered because of it. But apart from that, all the moulds out of the car. It's now a safe and habitable place to sit in, and hopefully the car will find a new owner soon. And for next week's episode, we've got something completely different, and it's a good example of what at least half of my work is. I do a lot of commercials, so drum roll, we're going to be doing the backbone of Britain as it's advertised, a Ford Transit van. And the next video is going to be about how much value you can polish back into a vehicle. So this is potentially going to increase this vehicle's price by about £1,000. We can remove that old glue, touch in the stone chips, etc. It's going to get full machine polish, the engine bay cleaned. We're going to thoroughly clean the cab, we're going to paint the wheels, and we're going to make that vehicle look absolutely fantastic. So if you haven't subscribed, please do think about doing so, and I look forward to seeing you next week.